Ralph Fiennes never read the Harry Potter books before playing Voldemort. The actor who played Barty Crouch Jr. invented his entire character tic on the spot. And the most iconic prop in the Malfoy scenes? The actor designed it himself, after rejecting the costume department's original idea entirely. The films changed more about these villains than most fans realize. Some of it made them better. Most of it made them smaller. Here is every major difference, villain by villain. Starting with Voldemort. Voldemort was described in the books as having scarlet red eyes with cat-like pupils, skin whiter than a skull, no nose, just 2 flat slits like a snake, no lips, and fingers so long they looked like spider legs. Ralph Fiennes kept his natural blue-gray eyes because the filmmakers decided red contacts would hide too much of his performance. Well, fair enough. But the more damaging change wasn't the eyes. It was the personality. Book Voldemort almost never raises his voice. He kills with quiet, cold precision. He is a calculated manipulator whose stillness is more terrifying than any outburst. Movie Voldemort screams, laughs maniacally, and murders in emotional rages. Ralph Fiennes reportedly did not read the books and built his entire performance from the scripts alone. The result is theatrical. It is not, however, Book Voldemort, a character whose power came from how unsettlingly composed he was. There is also the question of Tom Riddle's childhood. The books are explicit. Young Riddle was exceptionally handsome, magnetically charming, and beloved by almost every teacher at the orphanage and at Hogwarts. That charm is the entire point. He fooled everyone, including adults who should have known better. The films portray young Tom as a creepy, unsettling child from the moment he appears on screen, which is much easier to film and much less interesting as a villain origin story. The Half-Blood Prince novel contains 7 detailed pensieve memories devoted to Voldemort's origins. The film kept roughly 2.5. What was cut includes some of the most important context in the entire series. The Bob Ogden memory, where we see the Gaunt family shack, Voldemort's abusive grandfather, Marvolo, his mother, Merope, and the inbred, impoverished origins of the man who would champion blood purity, was entirely removed. We never see Merope using a love potion on Tom Riddle Sr., or dying in childbirth, or the bitter irony that Voldemort, obsessed with pureblood superiority, was a half-blood born from a destitute, half-mad family who could barely perform magic. We never see teenage Tom killing his father and grandparents and framing his Uncle Morphin. We never see him returning to Hogwarts as an adult to request the Defense Against the Dark Arts position, and Dumbledore refusing, and Voldemort cursing the job so no teacher lasts longer than a year. Movie audiences never learned why the Defense Against the Dark Arts position turned over every year. It was just one of those things. The most thematically important change in the entire franchise is how Voldemort dies. In the book, the final confrontation happens in the Great Hall in front of every surviving fighter. Harry and Voldemort circle each other while Harry delivers a long speech explaining Snape's true loyalty, the Elder Wand's allegiance, and the fact that the wand will never work properly against its true master. He calls Voldemort Tom repeatedly. He asks him to try for some remorse. When their spells meet, the Elder Wand flies to Harry, and Voldemort's killing curse rebounds. He falls. He leaves a corpse. A mundane, human, unremarkable corpse. That is Rowling's entire point. That despite everything, he was just a man, and he died like one. In the film, they duel privately in a courtyard. Most of the speech is gone, and Voldemort disintegrates into ash that drifts away into the wind. Visually spectacular. Thematically, the opposite of what the book intended. Severus Snape. Severus Snape in the books is 31 years old when Harry arrives at Hogwarts. Alan Rickman was 55. This is not a minor detail. It transforms the character's entire emotional core. Book Snape is a bitter young man whose childhood love died only a decade ago. Raw, recent, unresolved. Movie Snape looks like a man who has had decades to develop elegant detachment. The tragedy reads completely differently. The books also describe Snape as genuinely ugly. Greasy black hair, sallow yellowish skin, a hooked nose, yellowed uneven teeth, a man whose appearance mirrors his self-neglect and bitterness. Rickman brought natural dignity, careful diction, and aristocratic bearing. He is sympathetic before he opens his mouth. That is not a flaw in the performance. It is, however, a fundamental reinterpretation of who the character is. Book Snape is Neville Longbottom's Boggart, literally the thing Neville fears most in the world. Above, the woman who tortured his parents into permanent insanity. Snape threatened to poison Neville's toad Trevor in front of the class. He told Hermione, "I see no difference," when her teeth were magically enlarged. He deliberately sabotaged Harry's potions grades and vindictively revealed Lupin's werewolf condition to get him fired. The films reduced most of this to dry sarcasm and occasional disapproving head tilts. The movie even added a scene in Prisoner of Azkaban where Snape physically shields the trio from Werewolf Lupin. In the book, Snape was unconscious during that scene. The pensieve memory, Snape's worst memory, lost its entire purpose in the adaptation. In the book, the scene shows James Potter bullying a teenage Snape while Lily Evans intervenes, calling James an arrogant bully and defending Snape. Then, Snape, humiliated and furious, calls Lily a mudblood. That is why it is his worst memory. Not the bullying, but the moment he destroyed his friendship with the only person who ever cared about him, through his own hatred. The film cut Lily from the scene entirely, turning it into a simple bullying flashback. The Prince's Tale, Snape's death chapter, was sanitized in the adaptation. In the book, Snape initially begs Dumbledore to save only Lily, not James, not Harry, just Lily. Dumbledore responds, "You disgust me." The film changed this so Snape asks to hide them all, making him nobler from the outset and removing one of the most uncomfortable lines in the series. His death was also relocated, moved from the Shrieking Shack, which carries enormous symbolic weight given his history there with James and Lupin, to a generic boathouse. What Rickman added is worth noting. Before filming began, he went to Rowling and asked one question. Was Snape a pure villain? She told him, and only him, that Snape had been in love with Harry's mother. He carried this information for a decade of filming, layering in flickers of sadness and protectiveness that existed nowhere in the scripts. Directors questioned his choices repeatedly. He told them he would explain later. His performance made the eventual reveal land powerfully for an audience who had none of the book's careful setup, which is an extraordinary acting achievement, even if the character it produced was not quite the one Rowling wrote. Dolores Umbridge. Book Umbridge is physically described as squat, broad with a flabby face, bulging eyes, and a wide, slack mouth. The books make her repulsiveness legible at first glance. Imelda Staunton played her as a prim, grandmotherly figure radiating cheerful warmth, apparently modeling the performance partly on Margaret Thatcher's controlled sweetness masking authoritarian steel. The effect is that the movie Umbridge is more deceptively horrifying than book Umbridge, because no one would see her coming. This is one instance where the adaptation made a villain more effective. What the film cut is extensive. Umbridge's confession that she sent the Dementors to attack Harry in Little Whinging, acting entirely without Fudge's knowledge, was never clearly shown. Her nighttime raid to have Hagrid removed, during which McGonagall is hit by 4 stunners and hospitalized, was cut entirely. Firenze, the centaur replacing Trelawney as divination teacher, a deliberate provocation against Umbridge's anti-half-breed legislation, was omitted. The book's centaur encounter was reduced significantly. In the novel, Umbridge is so traumatized by her time with the centaurs that she flinches at the sight of them for the rest of her life. Her backstory was never addressed on screen. Umbridge is a half-blood who disowned her Muggle mother and her squib brother. She was sorted into Slytherin. She hated Hogwarts because she was never given power there. The woman running a Muggle-born registration commission, enthusiastically persecuting people for not being pureblood, could not pass her own tests. None of this appears in the films. Bellatrix Lestrange. Book Bellatrix Lestrange is coldly intelligent and terrifyingly competent. She engages in sharp intellectual sparring with Snape. She lectures Harry that the Cruciatus Curse requires genuine intent to cause pain, and she exercises deliberate, calculated control over her sadism. Helena Bonham Carter played her as having what she described as arrested development, someone who never really grew up. Carter admitted she found the character underdeveloped on the page and infused her with her own ingredients. Largely, by her own account, because she was bored. The result is entertaining, but trades the character's gravity for theatrical chaos. The physical description diverges as well. Book Bellatrix has dark, sleek hair and the faded remnants of aristocratic beauty. A great house, fallen into fanaticism. Movie Bellatrix has a wild gothic rat's nest that owes more to Tim Burton than to Rowling. The rotten teeth were Carter's own idea. Sirius Black's death was altered in a way that removes the book's deliberate ambiguity. In the novel, an unidentified spell knocks him off balance and he falls through the veil. It is the veil itself that kills him, and there is genuine uncertainty about whether the curse alone was lethal. The film shows a clear green flash from Bellatrix, definitively Avada Kedavra, which eliminates the mystery entirely. During the Malfoy Manor scene, Carter improvised, carving the word mudblood into Hermione's arm. This does not occur in the books, where Bellatrix uses the Cruciatus curse. It became one of the most viscerally memorable moments in the franchise. Meanwhile, major book scenes were removed entirely. Bellatrix was not present at the astronomy tower for Dumbledore's death in the novel. The film placed her there and gave her a strange, unexplained scene burning the Weasley house. The Burrow attack never happens in the books, was invented entirely for the film, and contributes nothing to the plot or character arc of either Bellatrix or Greyback. Barty Crouch Jr. Barty Crouch Jr. received the franchise's most consequential single cut. After Crouch confesses under Veritas serum at the end of Goblet of Fire, Cornelius Fudge arrives with a Dementor that immediately performs the kiss, removing Crouch's soul permanently and destroying the only available witness to Voldemort's return. This is the structural reason the Ministry refuses to accept the evidence. There is no witness. There is no testimony. There is nothing. The film cut this entirely, leaving Crouch's fate ambiguous and creating a logical gap that runs through the entire fifth film. If he is still alive with his soul intact, why can he not testify? His backstory was almost entirely removed. The book explains that Crouch's dying mother used Polyjuice Potion to switch places with him in Azkaban, dying there in his form while he lived under his father's Imperious Curse for years. He was kept hidden, attended by the house elf Winky. None of this made the film. Winky does not exist in the movies. The lengthy Veritaserum confession chapter, which fills an enormous narrative gaps, was reduced to a few frantic lines. The tongue-flick tick that David Tennant gave the character, a reptilian lip lick that appears nowhere in the books, was fully improvised. Director Mike Newell liked it enough to require Brendan Gleeson to perform it as disguised Moody, so the reveal would feel consistent. Fans are divided. Some call it brilliant foreshadowing. Others note it made the twist obvious from the character's first scene. At his trial in the book, Crouch Jr. desperately cries out, "Father, I didn't do it!" A line that creates genuine ambiguity about his guilt and the relationship with a cold, neglectful parent. The film played him as openly gleeful and defiant, removing the psychological dimension entirely. Peter Pettigrew. Peter Pettigrew's death is the single biggest unfired Chekhov's gun in the adaptation. The setup spans 3 novels. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry spares his life, and Dumbledore tells Harry the time may come where he is very glad he did. In Goblet of Fire, Voldemort rewards Pettigrew's sacrifice of his hand with a silver magical replacement, and warns that his loyalty had better never waver again. In Deathly Hallows, the payoff arrives. Pettigrew begins strangling Harry with the silver hand in Malfoy's manor cellar. Harry says, "You owe me, Wormtail." Pettigrew hesitates for one moment of mercy. The silver hand senses the disloyalty and turns on its master, strangling him to death despite Harry and Ron's attempts to stop it. The films cut this entirely. Pettigrew is knocked unconscious by Dobby and never seen again. The filmmakers reportedly considered the self-strangulation too violent for the rating. This eliminated a 3-book thematic arc about mercy, debt, and the mechanics of consequence. One of the most carefully constructed narrative threads in the series. The silver hand was a prop that appeared in one film and accomplished nothing. Draco Malfoy. Book Draco Malfoy uses the word mudblood with casual frequency. He composes the "Weasley is our king" song designed to psychologically destroy Ron before Quidditch matches. He runs Umbridge's inquisitorial squad and uses the position to genuinely harm students he dislikes. Tom Felton's natural charisma generated a fandom that surprised Rowling herself, and the films adjusted accordingly, cutting most of the overt cruelty and adding sympathetic visual cues. Draco crying over a dead bird in a bathroom while testing the vanishing cabinet. His visible anguish on the astronomy tower, his conversations with Moaning Myrtle, one of the few people he confided in, are almost entirely absent. His skill at occlumency, which allowed him to conceal his plans from both Dumbledore and Voldemort, goes unmentioned. Lucius Malfoy's original film design was a modern suit with short hair. Jason Isaacs rejected it entirely and pitched the long blonde wig, the cape, and the snake-headed walking cane concealing his wand. Director Chris Columbus initially resisted the cane on the grounds that wands simply appear. He paused for 3 seconds and then said the toy department was going to love it. The cane became one of the franchise's most iconic props. Isaacs once tried to leave the set with it and was caught. In Deathly Hallows, after Voldemort confiscates his wand, Lucius reflexively pulls the snake head from the cane and then stares at his empty hand, a piece of character work that Isaacs added himself. Book Lucius is a serious political operator who bribes ministry officials, sits on the Hogwarts Board of Governors, hosts Fudge at the World Cup, and places multiple people under the Imperius Curse. The crucial context, that Lucius deployed Riddle's diary against Ginny Weasley on his own initiative without Voldemort's permission to discredit Arthur Weasley, is the reason Voldemort punishes the Malfoy family so brutally in later books. The films never established this, which makes Voldemort's treatment of the Malfoys feel arbitrary rather than earned. Fenrir Greyback. Fenrir Greyback in the books deliberately targets children for werewolf infection. He bit 5-year-old Remus Lupin as revenge against Lupin's father. Dumbledore noted that Greyback had developed a taste for human flesh that persisted outside the full moon. He savaged Bill Weasley's face at the Astronomy Tower, threatened Hermione at Malfoy Manor, and attacked Lavender Brown during the Battle of Hogwarts. In the films, Greyback speaks twice across 3 appearances. His connection to Lupin is never mentioned. Bill's mauling happens off-screen. His ideology of building a werewolf army by targeting children is completely absent. His role as Snatcher leader, which he holds in the books, was transferred to the invented character, Scabior. Greyback is the most dramatically reduced character in the entire adaptation. Professor Quirrell. Quirrell's death was inverted in a way that affects how the hero is portrayed. In the book, Voldemort abandons Quirrell's body, and Quirrell simply dies. Harry does not kill him. In the film, Harry actively burns Quirrell to dust by touching him. It is a significantly more violent act for an 11-year-old protagonist, and it is the opposite of what happened. Cornelius Fudge ran an active smear campaign against Harry and Dumbledore in the books, planting stories in the Daily Prophet, sending Dementors to manipulate witnesses, blocking every avenue of evidence. The films softened him into a more passive denier, which reduced the book's core argument that institutional cowardice enables evil just as effectively as evil itself. Regulus Black's sacrifice was condensed to a single expository scene. The book devotes an entire chapter to how the young Death Eater discovered Voldemort's Horcrux, drank the potion himself to spare his house elf creature, swapped the lockets, and was dragged to his death by Inferi. That backstory transforms Creature from a hostile, resentful figure into a devoted one. And at the Battle of Hogwarts, Creature leads the house elves into combat, crying, "Fight! Fight in the name of brave Regulus!" None of this survived the adaptation. If you want more of this, every piece of Wizarding World lore the films glossed over, the next video covers something most Harry Potter fans have never actually thought about. There are 11 wizarding schools in the world, and every single one of them selects students differently. Hogwarts sends a letter. Others don't. Some find you before you find them. That video is up next.